Hello, everyone, and welcome to Sentence Diagramming 101, Chapter 2, Function in the Sentence. So previously, we talked about Chapter 1, which was about parts of speech. That's what a word is. Like, if you look it up in the dictionary, that's what you will find. You know, adjective, adverb, noun. Whereas a word's function is literally like, what is it doing in the sentence? Now, a lot of our parts of speech have common functions, like often nouns are subjects and verbs are going to verb, but not always. A lot of times our words do double duty or triple duty, or everything wants to be an adverb. So this chapter is going to talk about how those words are acting, grammatically speaking, in the sentences. So the one that you're probably the most familiar with when it comes to word function is this word subject, right? So the subject of the sentence is going to be the doer or the actor, the thing that is doing whatever the verb is and, affecting the rest of the sentence. So subjects are often at the beginning, but not always, because English is delightful. Sometimes we move our subjects around. We don't have the kind of flexibility that other languages do to move them, but we definitely have a little bit. Now, before we get started, a brief note about phrases and clauses, because these are two terms that are going to come up again and again. A phrase is a fancy word for when you have more than one word working together in English, but that group of words does not include a subject and a verb. It might have a subject, it might have a verb, but it won't have both behaving as subjects and verbs alone. So that's a phrase. A clause, on the other hand, will have a subject and a verb acting together. Now, whether they're independent or not depends, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a later chapter, but you might have heard something like independent clauses, dependent clauses kind of rattling around in the back of your brain. So a clause is when you have a subject and a verb together, and a phrase is when you just have a bunch of words together, not necessarily a subject and a verb. Okay, so to find the subject, you have to find the verb, right? What's happening, the action, and then figure out what's doing that thing. So in this first sentence, some moviegoers insist that popcorn is the reason to go to the movies at all. I'm one of those. But the insist is the verb, right? That's the thing that's happening. So who insists? Well, the moviegoers. So moviegoers is your subject. And then I, however, am fond of candy and a slushie. I mean, all right, that's true too. But I am, right? So who is I? Right? I am. Now, certain subjects are going to be a lot easier to find, especially pronouns, because the words I, we, you's not a good example though, because you does a lot of things and we don't like to change it. But I, we, those are going to be subjects all the time. That's what they do. They is another one that's always going to be a subject. That's why it's in the subjective case. Remember that from back in the pronouns chapter? Okay. Moving on, we have my husband enjoys slathering popcorn with butter. He enjoys. Well, who enjoys? Husband. So husband's your subject there. And then my daughter likes to munch on pretzel bites during the movie. So likes. Who likes? My daughter. So that's my subject. Now, subjects don't have to be one word. We like infinite options in English. So sometimes your subject will be an entire phrase, or even later on, an entire clause. But let's start with the basics. So we've got watching movies in the theater is one of my favorite activities. Well, what is one of my favorite activities? That whole thing, watching movies in the theater. So that's the subject. Or the fact that I can buy my tickets online still amazes my Generation X mindset. I still get excited when I don't have to actually wait online to buy a ticket. So I'm old, it's fine. But what amazes my Gen X mindset? The fact that I can buy tickets online. So that would be my subject. Now, moving on, we've got a couple more examples, but with the subject not at the beginning of the sentence. So like I said, sometimes English is like, no, I'm going to get poetic about it. And I'm going to move it to the end. So in the field beyond the theater hides, well, what hides? A gorgeous display of lilies. So lilies is the display is the subject. Of lilies is actually a prepositional phrase, but we didn't talk about that yet. So hold that thought. Moving on, we've got after the movie, we always wait. Well, who waits? We, right? So we is the subject. You know we's the subject because it's always the subject. And if it's not the subject and you're using we, it's the wrong word. So it should be us. We is the subject there. After the credits end, the audience will slowly exit the theater. So in this case, what ends? The credits. So that's the subject of this tiny, tiny little clause. And then the audience will exit. Who's going to exit? The audience is going to exit. So that's your subject there. And this gets into a little bit of the independent-dependent clause thing, but like I said, we'll talk about that a little bit later on, so just keep it in the back of your brain. The other thing that you want to keep in mind is that sometimes we like more than one subject in a sentence. We like to have many things doing a thing. So in this case, when we talk about Avatar, the movie, Jake Sully and Neytiri are the main characters. Well, who are both of them? So those two things are called a compound subject just because there's more than one. You can have 2, you can have 5. I don't know that you want 7 subjects. It gets a little wild. But you can have multiple words that are all working on the same verb. So in this sentence about Jake's mission, well, what makes his mission difficult? The soldiers and the suspicious Na'vi. So that's how you would end up with compound subjects. So now you want to pause. Oh, well, this video is going to end, but you want to practice with exercise. So it's 2A on the subjects, and then watch the video and see how you did.